Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this special edition. Today, I am here with herbalist and astrologer Cameron Allen, and we're going to be talking about how to harmonize your body, mind, and spirit with different astrological transits. So, as we go through different transits, what you can do to actually support yourself, body, mind, and spirit through those different energies. Last week, we also had Cameron on, so I'm not going to do a long intro. He actually told his story and how he came to becoming an herbalist and astrologer. You can actually check that out. It was last week episode, I'm going to get the number, but I don't have it right off the top of my head. But you can look in our show list. If you're on YouTube, you can look on the different shows. If you're on the podcast, if you're on Facebook, you can go and look at our different videos and you'll see last week's episode with Cameron. And what we talked about last week was the elements and your body. So he went through the 4 elements and how to work with different elements in your chart. If you have a lot of something or not a lot of something in your chart, how to work with that. And he gave very practical tools that you can use to, for example, bring more earth or bring more air or bring more fire into your reality. It's episode number 138. So you can find that and check it out. But today, again, we're focused on transits, and this is all to give you an idea of the power of working with your astrology chart and working with astrology in general to really optimize your health and your well-being. And that is what Cameron loves to teach and what he's actually teaching with us right now in a course that we're offering called Health Secrets of the Zodiac. It is now open for enrollment for just a few more days. If you want to check out that course, you can go to astrologyhub.com/secrets, and enrollment is open until Sunday, August 23rd. We're having a live Q&A with Cameron the following week. So if you'd like to get in and participate in the live Q&A and be a part of this first round of students that's going through this course, you can do so now. Again, that's astrologyhub.com/secrets. Cameron, it is so amazing to have you back. Last week was so much fun. Everybody loved it. And it's just great to have you here again.
Yeah, it was great. I love the energy with Astrology Hub's community always. It's so great to be back again. I appreciate y'all so much.
It's a special group, isn't it? I mean, it feels good. You all bring such amazing energy. Thank you. Like so many of our astrologers say that, and it always makes me so proud. It's like, yes, they're so amazing, aren't they? Okay, so let's start with the transits, and then we're also going to take a few questions. Last week, Cameron answered someone's question about she has a Cancer rising, and she said she was having a lot of stagnation with her weight loss efforts. And Cameron was able to give her some great tips and tools for working with that and with her astrology. So if you do have questions about your body, mind, spirit, and especially today we're talking about transits, so different ways that you can support your body and your health through different transits, go ahead and put them in the chat. And we'll answer as many as we can at the end of the broadcast. And actually, Cameron goes in after the show and answers some questions too. He's really good about that. So if you do want to post and you're watching this later, you can post your question and maybe Cameron will be able to answer it there too. All right. You have the floor, Cameron.
Yeah, totally. So whenever we talk about transits, I feel like a lot of people start at transits, but I always like to take a step back. If anybody's ever heard me, I always take steps back. And I start with the natal chart, right? Because that's the very beginning. And even in the course, I talk about, like, there's someone named Paracelsus, and he talks about if you don't know the origin of something, then you don't know what's happening right now, no matter what is going on, right? So even if you know, like, oh, they have this disease, this illness, or something going on emotionally, it's like, well, where do they come from, right? We have to have a context for the content. So that's what we're going to do, talk about that. So there's a few different lenses to see it through. In the Ayurvedic tradition, they call it Prakruti versus Vikruti. So Prakruti just means like your essential nature, and you can look at it as nature, right? So Prakruti could be seen as nature versus Vikruti being like nurture, or like what has happened throughout your life and how that has changed you and how you've evolved with your essential nature in the Constitution, which is just like how you're constituted, like what is your makeup when you first come here versus how are you right now. And that's important because if someone is born and they're a fiery person and then later in their life they're a watery person, right? Just on a simple level, it's like, well, what happened? Like, because something about it inside of me, I'm always like, just looking in a child's eyes, like I feel like they already know. Like they already know what's up and they know who they are and they just express it like unapologetically. So things happen over time, conditioning, the foods we eat, all the experiences that we have, and that changes things. So that's just the first thing always when it comes to transits, looking at the natal chart to find out what is the essential nature of the person. So that's the first thing to begin with. And my teacher, Seja Popham from Evolutionary Herbalist, he says it's like a seed, right? The essential nature when we first get here is like the seed. And then the transit later on is like what activates it, and either a flower will blossom or it won't have the things that it needs to thrive, and maybe it won't blossom, or it'll go into the leafing stage and then it'll wilt away, or different things happen after that. So that's just a perspective to have before we even go into transits. So the first thing I look at when I'm thinking of transits, I think of the planets in the transits. So the first thing I look at is the planets in their speed, right? Their speed. Because let me take another step back. So just thinking about transits and everything in life being transitory, right? That is actually the only thing that is fixed and the only thing that is constant in life, the transitions of all things. It's always happening. So we have to be mindful of that as well. So with the speed of the planets, we're going to have chronic or we're going to have acute things that happen, right? So the acute things are things that are like moving by really quickly, which would be something like the moon or Mercury or Venus, and sometimes Venus isn't necessarily acute. So you guys have to be mindful of like retrogrades and such, but mostly like Mercury, the moon, the sun, Venus, Mars. I look at those as all acute because they're moving pretty quickly there, right? And then we're going to look at everything outside of that, the outer planets or the social planets, as more chronic things. So that's going to be Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So that's something to get a baseline on. Is this thing happening really fast, or is it happening more slowly over time? And that's important because the things that are acute, right? Like if we can identify what the moon is doing every single month, right? It's like, yeah, like I have backache sometimes, but that sometimes is like when the moon goes into Capricorn, and that happens once a month, and we don't have awareness around that. But if we don't find awareness around that, because the moon cycle is approximately like 28 energy, right? And then you go to Saturn, which is chronic. And how many years does it take Saturn to go around the chart? 28, 29-ish, 30, right? So it's like those two things. It's like that acute turns chronic over time. So we have to be mindful of the speed of things and the transitory nature of things, because the things that we do acute are the things that are chronic. The things that we do acute are chronic, always. Whether that's from us or from our parents. I'm not going to go down that highway all the way, but that's just a reflection. So I'm going to go through the planets and just talk about some transitory experiences that we might have with the planets. So first I'm going to start with the sun. And the sun has like an illuminating quality to it. So on a psychological level, it could like show us something, or it's illuminating things. We can see it, right? And just on a physical level, it's going to be more like warmth. So it's going to bring warmth to things. So depending on where it's at in your chart, it'll bring warmth or illumination to certain areas. Let's say we have the sun transiting Mars. So Mars is a planet or an energetic force that is hot. So we have something that is hot and the sun goes over it and it warms it up. What might happen, right? It might get overheated. Super simple there, super simple. So then let's take Saturn. We have Saturn, and that's a cold planet. And then we have the sun, and it goes over Saturn, and it warms it up. That might be nice, right? We don't want to be excessively cold, and Saturn brings coldness and constriction, and the sun brings like illumination, warmth, vibrance, vitality, So just if we can stay on that level, if you've never heard of transits or worked with medical astrology, we can always start there, and it could just be that, like A plus B. It can be that simple in your experience, and always bring that back to the body. Yeah, I feel looser than I did last week, right? I'm more expressive. I actually feel more creative where I felt stagnant, right? That's that Saturn that might be constricting, cold. And then the sun coming and giving that some vibrancy, maybe some like illumination, creativity, right? So those transits will all go together with your psychological, emotional well-being, but then also in your tissue states. So that's the sun. And then the moon, the moon is moving really, really quick there. So the sun is moving 1 degree a day approximately. So the moon is moving way faster than that. So I always invite people that I work with to follow the moon first, because it gives you more of a transitory experience. And you can follow that, right? Like the sun, it's moving slower. So sometimes we don't necessarily see what, like the moods from the sun going to 1 degree to 10 degrees. Like that's it's 10 days, right? But with the moon, it's like we're changing all the time. And that's like how I feel in this present moment. And I can track that, right? So even if there is something that like, oh, it comes up from time to time, right? We check the moon for that. And we see if we can find a pattern with that. And then we see if we can find emotional dynamic with that. Because if all those things correspond to each other, we find a deeper understanding of self. And finding a deeper understanding of self is always going to be a part of the remedy moving forward as well when it comes to transits. So the moon, it has more moistening quality and it's cooling, right? And it also, in a psychological, emotional way, it brings some sense of like safety or emotional security, or lack thereof, right? So you got to remember that there's a spectrum there. So sometimes it might be like, ooh, I just feel so good. And the next time it comes around, right? And it might be squaring something the next time when it was opposed to something the first time. And it might, like, one time it might make you feel good and one time it might not. So it's going to manifest different depending on where the moon is at and how you're following it. So the moon, yeah, it's moistening and it's cooling. And sometimes it can tend towards like creating a lot of dampness. So moisture is like dampness, and that dampness can get stuck in places. But just being mindful that it is transitory. So sometimes people will have an experience where they work out often, right? And then one day their leg swells up, but then 2 days later it's gone. And that just happens every so now and then, right? That might be a moon thing. Because of the water content, right? So then we move to Venus. We can go to Venus after that. Or let's go to Mercury. So Mercury can create like nervousness. It can create tension. And I also say it creates a state where we need to breathe more, is what I like to say. And I also like to have that context in mind, taking a step back to the sun, taking things like B12 or doing like more vigorous exercises like jumping jacks or just like getting your body moving. Like that's a sun thing because it brings more energy and vitality to you. The moon is going to be more like flow. So just like move in your body or even maybe like resting, depending on how you feel. That's more of a moon thing. So that's like a moon remedy. And then with Mercury, it can create nervous tension sometimes. So I bring in the breathing exercises with that. And Mercury is about communication. Things might get a little quicker depending on where Mercury's at in your chart. So that's Mercury. And Venus, energetically speaking, taking a step back to Mercury. So Mercury, energetically speaking, it's nervous tension. And also they call it wind tension. And you can just think of it as like when the wind is blowing by really fast and it's just like kind of hitting you and it makes you like cringe kind of. So it gives you that kind of feeling. So it's like a spasm kind of feeling, how the wind goes by and you feel that. So yeah, it's something to be mindful of with Mercury. So then Venus. And Venus is like, oh, she just wants to relax and she wants to be taken care of. Maybe she wants to indulge in things. So we want to be mindful with Venus transits and we have to be mindful too of this because the conditioning of the reality we're in, because there's a difference between lazy and relaxation. Those are two very different things. And in our society, sometimes a little relaxation is seen as being lazy because we're overproductive on some level, and it's like super toxic. So I just have to throw that out there. There's a difference between being relaxed and knowing how much value you have and knowing that you have enough and being grateful and having gratitude, and being lazy and not doing things. Those two things are different things. So we have to be mindful of that. But with Venus, things do tend to get relaxed, right? So that could look like, if somebody has that in their chart and it gets activated by a transit, that could look like varicose veins popping up, right? Because the varicose veins, like the tissue states of the veins just kind of get like loose and they like relax too much, right? They're getting lazy, right? They're getting lazy. And this brings up another thing for me right now. With everybody who thinks about traditional astrology when it comes to like exaltation and all the essential dignities and like fall and detriment, this is something that I'm not going to say made me a believer, but it made me understand in a more clear way, right? If something is quote unquote in fall, this doesn't necessarily have to do anything with someone's psychological well-being or who they are as a person. Sometimes it just has to do with a tissue state. The way that I like to talk about it, because I want to remove it from that context, I like to think about one of my favorite plants is Solomon seal, right? Solomon seal likes the shade. It loves the shade, right? So when I plant Solomon seal, I put it in the shade. It's an exaltation in the shade. It loves being there. It thrives there. And it's in detriment when it's in the middle of a hot sun, in the hot sun all day, right? It doesn't naturally grow there, right? That's not conducive for its growth. Very, very simple. So if we can just take off the lens of judgment of these words, even though they might have been, they might not have been. I don't know them back then, right? Just an open invitation to look at it from that perspective, right? Yeah, so Venus. I don't know if I talked about Venus enough, but if anybody has any questions, just let me know. So I'm going to move on to Mars. So Mars is a hot planet. It's stimulating. It gets things going. You know, injuries can occur there when Mars comes through, even if it's just as simple as like a cut to a certain place. Even if you're just like, I've had this happen before, and this is like one of the things that like brought me to telling people like, I don't believe in astrology because astrology just exists in reality and it doesn't need my validation and it already happens. So I remember Mars was going through Sagittarius, and one day I was just walking down the street and I went across a gate and it cut my thigh. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I was like not even worrying about myself bleeding. I was like, oh my gosh, astrology is so amazing because like Mars is Sagittarius and it's in my first house specifically. So that's about my health and my physical body, right? So it was even more highlighted for me that Mars would do something to my physical body in the area of my thighs. So yeah, that's just something to think about too as well. Even when we think about benefic and malefic, not even gonna go there right now either. But yeah, things can happen, right? And it's just a clear physical representation, manifestation in reality sometimes. So yeah, Mars is acute, it stimulates things. Mars also, sometimes in the chart, when things are being transited by Mars, it creates like a lot of acids in the body. It can create an acidic environment. And whenever we have excess acids in the body, that is not good for our body and it breaks things down, right? So when it's breaking things down, it deteriorates things and it can cause like a sense of like withering things away. So that's how I said I wasn't gonna talk about it, but bringing in malefic could just be like breaking something down, right? Acids break things down. Mars, malefic, oh no, right? It can be, oh no, sure, that's super true sometimes, but just this different perspective. And also sometimes like when we get into like this spirituality communities and stuff, it's just like everything's like love, light, growth, everything is, and it's like, yes, that's true, but like I'm not going to negate the fact that things need to be broken down to be built up, because this is reality, and creation is building and destroying. Destroying is just as much of creation as building is. So just an open invitation for that reframe and orientation towards life, because it helps us be able to adapt and cope with things better when we have a good spectrum-oriented understanding rather than a bias. Yeah. So from Mars, we're going to go out to social planets. We're going to go to Jupiter. And Jupiter likes to begin things, right? It's about expansion and growth. So let's say Jupiter is transiting Scorpio, right? So if Jupiter is transiting Scorpio, let's say Scorpio is the colon, right? The area of the body, which is the sign. And then the planet that is Jupiter is the actual energetic force. So we're putting the force of Jupiter that is expansive into the colon, right? So things expand. And even with Jupiter, sometimes we can get overindulgent. It can be too much. And it's like if you have too much going on in your colon, right, things get stagnant, things get stuck. Scorpio is already a fixed water sign. So, A plus B equals C. And it's just that simple sometimes, right? So that's Jupiter. It likes the big in things. And it tends to be like hot and moist because that's the air. That's what we need for things to grow, right? Hot is warm. So it's warm and moist, not hot, because there's a difference, right? Let me talk about that difference real quick too. So we have on this spectrum, right? We have hot, we have warm, we have neutral, we have cool, and then we have cold. And then there's a million variations in between, right? Of course. So just being mindful of that too as well. Sometimes people ask questions and I'm like, is it hot or cold? And then they're like, it's hot. I'm like, there you go. This planet Mars, hot, right? And we stick to that. And then we move forward from it later or get into complexities later with transits. So that's Jupiter. And then with Saturn creates restriction, constriction, potentially limitations, and that could lead towards tension in the body. That could tend towards tension in our minds or feeling like oppressed, repressed, suppressed, depressed, depending on what's occurring, right? So even saying in that perspective, like, but that also could be an invitation for us to like get deep rest, depressed, deep rest, right? Going down and in deeply, resting, taking our time. Saturn is slow, Saturn is cold, Saturn is dry. Sometimes we need to sleep, especially in the wintertime during Capricorn season. In the hemisphere where I live, at least. I don't know about people in South America. I've been trying to figure that out for a while. So open invitation for anybody to reflect what happens in Southern Hemisphere, rather. Yeah. So Saturn also, when it comes to limitations, restrictions, constrictions, I always invite people to have an open relationship with the planets. So it's like, instead of Saturn having to be like, all right, I'm going to limit you, sometimes I observe that we need to limit things in our life, right? So even going back to malefic, benefic, right? I look at malefics a lot of times as I need to get rid of this thing because this thing is not conducive to my growth. This is not helpful for me. I need to get rid of it. So I'm being the malefic force in my life when it comes to cookies at 10:30 p.m. at night, right? Like that's my thing. So it's like we have to have those boundaries, Saturn, right, to a certain extent. And not being rigid with it, right? Not being rigid with it, but just finding that understanding and that orientation towards things. It's really important. Okay, so then we move on to the outer planets. And the outer planets can be a whole nother ball game. And I don't even know if everybody even really understands them, or I can't even say that I fully understand them sometimes because it feels like they're working outside of what we think chronological time is, which is like chronos, chronological, right? It's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, which is ruled by the inner planets. And the outer planets are just like everywhere like air, or they're like in the atmosphere just occurring. And sometimes, so that's just my perspective on the outer planets too as well. Also with the outer planets, when it comes to transits, we have to be mindful. These are transpersonal, right? They're transpersonal. So they're beyond us. So even tying back in what I was saying in the beginning about like your natal chart and like your Prakruti or your essential nature in the outer planets has to do with what came before you. It had to do with your parents, it had to do with your grandparents, and everyone before that as well. That is another reflection why it's transpersonal. It's beyond us. It's beyond us. And it happened over time slowly. So if we obtain or we can see it as a gift or a curse, right? The things that we're given, handed down in our genetics, right, that are transpersonal, it's like it takes time for us to evolve and to change those things. Whether good, bad, it doesn't matter, right? Those energies take time to be transmuted, right? And that's why they're so potent and powerful when people attune to them. And that's why it also can be things that happen on like an unconscious subtle level that we like tend to miss or not see, right? Because from the age we're prenatal to all the way to like 7 to approximately 9, we're in theta wave brain state. So it's like these things are just like imprinted on us. And not only they're imprinted on us, they were imprinted on our parents and our environment, whatever environment we're in. So we just have to be mindful of stuff like that. So with Uranus, it can also have like, I say it has like an energetic flavor of Mercury. So some people consider it to be a higher octave of Mercury. So it's also going to create like tension, spasm, but it also has this other quality to it where I've seen working with people where we work with what some people call the aura field, or you can call it the electromagnetic field, or like the energy body that is around people, right? It's like if you put your hand up and someone else puts their hand up next to it, there might just be this like information that's going back and forth, right? And it's just like the electrical force that you can feel, the unique blueprint that someone has around them, right? That's the electric force that they exert. So during Uranus transits, it's either taking things that help with like antispasmodics, which will relax you, because sometimes as well with Uranus, it can be like flashes of insight that people get. And when you're getting flashes of insight, like on a spiritual level, sometimes that can be kind of overwhelming. So you want to have a strong nervous system in those cases. You want to have a strong nervous system. So there's different practices that you can do, which in the Health Secrets of the Zodiac, I do have an exercise there in the Aquarius energy, because from my perspective, it co-rules that sign. So that's Uranus. And then also Uranus, I perceive it as like unique authenticity. And I have many theories, but I have a theory that sometimes that's why Uranus can seem erratic, because it's like you have a unique, individual, authentic self inside of you. And I think sometimes Uranus is like wants to shake it up so that you can unveil what that is, right? It's like, oh, I'm just going about my life. I'm not really deeply in my authenticity. And Uranus is like, do it. And it's just like, poof. And it also shows us what we really care about. Because when things get shaken up, like whatever we're grabbing onto, we don't have to like think about it. We don't have to sit and journal about what we really care about. What is uniquely authentic for us and to us, it'll just burst forth, right? So that's the way I look at Uranus. There's many other things for Uranus, but I'm gonna stop there. So next we have Neptune. And Neptune, it could be a lot of different things. It could be so many different things. I'm gonna say this before I go for it. From my lens, on a spiritual level that I've felt deeply inside of myself. People say that Neptune is about illusions, confusion, and I say that is about just dissolving things, because I think we are the ones that have the illusions of what we think this reality is. And the ultimate truth is somewhere else, or it's trying to show us what the ultimate truth is. Because the thing about it is, truth is not relative. It's not relative. Truth is truth. One of my teachers, I was talking to one of my teachers last night, and he just really we were talking about this, and he's just like, truth is truth. Personal truth is relative. We can say capital T truth, and that's ultimate truth. And then we can say lowercase t truth, and that could be your truth if you want it to be, and that might be relative. But underneath it all, truth is truth. It's not relative. That's just my lens. But okay, so Neptune can also be like, it could bring like a fogginess, a cloudiness during these transits. And I correspond it specifically to the energy of what's called diffusive. It's diffusive. So even like if I have energy in my body, and then if I take my energy, like I am Cameron, I feel solid in that. And then if you diffuse that, right? Think about essential oils. When you diffuse it, it just kind of like disperses everywhere. And I'm like, I am Cameron, and I'm not solid in that, right? It could be like very diffusive in that way. So yeah, that's Neptune. And then also, since Neptune does correspond to the lymphatic system, research has even shown like with the lymphatic system, specifically if the lymph gets stagnant in your head or in your body in general, honestly, then it does create confusion, right? It like you can't read things, like your body can't read things in your body when there's just a lot of stagnation in your lymphatic system, because it's filtering out the things that aren't needed, the things that aren't you, the things that aren't of your highest good, the things that aren't truth within you. And when you get rid of those things, Neptune just flows, and there is no confusion. There is not even confusion when you know you don't know, right? That's the thing to know. Oh, I don't know. I'm not confused. I don't know. Now let me surrender to this present moment and accept what is so that I can see the truth of what's occurring. Yeah, so that's Neptune. I like that one. That felt good. Okay, so now on to Pluto. Now, Pluto is like this whole other experience. I experienced Pluto transits as like, and I've had it going through my first house for a really long time right now. I experience it as very cathartic for me personally. And I also experience it as extremes, right? So when people say Pluto, it can be like really intense. It's like it can be intensely hot or it can be intensely cold. I look at it as extreme, like extremes on that polarity a lot of times. And it also can be things that make you feel empowered. So it's like a deep, like summoning of like, maybe like people will call a soul force or your deep self. And you just feel it so intensely. And that's empowering to feel that. Or it could be like, you know that you have that energy within you and it's being suppressed. So there's a sense of like potential powerlessness. And that creates stagnation in your soul, in your deep self. And that needs to be transmuted. And I like to distinguish between transformation and transmutation because they're two different things. Transformation is like, I'm Cameron and I grew up. And transmutation is like, I was a caterpillar and you checked back in 3 months ago and you don't even know what you're looking at anymore. You don't even know what you're looking at anymore. It completely just transmuted, right? So just that differentiation, I feel like it's important. So Pluto also can bring a sense of like needing to detoxify whatever area it's going through. It needs to cleanse it. It needs to, get rid of it, purge. I think of that. I think of what I like to call phoenix consciousness, which would just be transmutation as well. And I also look at this as like what they call Kundalini Energy. So it's like actual power and the force that actually is like driving all the desires, all the energy within the body deeply, right? And then I right now, as a working thing for myself, I work with it for the endocrine system. And I also heard somebody, it was Chris Brennan, and he was quoting somebody else, but he says, Pluto makes small things big and big things small. The endocrine system. Ooh, look at this little pineal gland. Oh, that's so cute. But it runs everything, right? It's like, oh, yeah, like sometimes mom didn't give me hugs, and you don't like hugs. You act like you don't want to be touched, right? But you really deeply crave like just, to be held, whether that's physically or emotionally. And so that's Pluto. That's the planets and the transits. Oh, I want to go over the nodes. So the North Node is with the nodes, they think of it as like a dragon, right? So the North Node would be the dragon's head, right? Where it can be like all-consuming energy. It's just excess, like a lot, more. And then the South Node would be like less, get rid of. So the North Node could bring excess or too much of something. And then the South Node could bring a deficiency, right? So the way I like to look at that is like whenever the North Node is transiting something, I'm just perceiving if I'm doing too much, right? And in the South Node, I look at it as like, what do I need to get rid of? Because a lot of times people don't weave back in the truth of the matter that both of the nodes, when people are saying North Node, South Node, it's in relativity to the moon, right? So we always have to be mindful. Why is it so excessive? Why is the North Node so excessive? Why is the South Node so much like needing to get rid of so much stuff? Because it's not connected to the emotional identity or feeling nurtured and safe in the moment, which is the moon. So if I feel everything is fine and I'm safe and I feel secure in my emotional identity, then I probably won't go for excess and I won't need to clean a lot out because I have a good orientation and those things are balanced. So that's just some reflections, and there's so many other things that could be said there, but those are just my reflections on the planets in transits.
Wow. Cameron, it's so exciting, both the content and your delivery, because, and for those of you listening on the podcast, you may want to go over to YouTube or our website and see the video, because you are transmitting so much through your body language and through the way that you move your hands and the way you move your body and the way you use your voice, that I personally feel an entrainment happening with what you're saying. It's like a deeper level of understanding through the visual of watching you almost impersonate or embody these different energies, which is really cool.
Right.
So I have a few questions, and then we'll go to some questions from the audience. But when all these transits are happening at the same time, or, there's a lot of, it's not like one thing's happening at one, how do you prioritize or like focus in your attention on a certain transit that's happening in order to inform your health choices or how to support your body, mind, and spirit better?
Yeah, most of the time I would start with the ascendant. Well, actually, taking a step back, that's not what I do, because I don't start with astrology, because astrology fits into reality, and my reality is what I start with, right? So if I'm getting too hot, or if I feel like I'm been angry lately, I go straight to Mars and see what's happening. Okay. So I always use the context, and like you were saying, like the embodiment of it, right? When we can feel what's going on inside of ourselves, we use astrology as like a contextual tool. And it can be more predictive, and that's super fair, and it's true. But this is just my orientation towards it, because I'm having the experience and I only see through the lens of I. So I start there. But then if we're going just like on a technical aspect of it, I go to the ascendant, see what's going on with the ruler of the ascendant. And then I'll go to the houses of health, which would be the 6th house, the 8th house, and the 12th house. So I look at those places to see. And most of the time people aren't, I wish it was different, but a lot of times people aren't coming to me like, how can I like just improve and like build my vital force, which that would be amazing. And I would love that. And it could actually change the context of medical astrology, because the 6th house, a lot of people say that's illness. In the 8th house, that could be like a new person I'm learning from calls that anxiety, but in the past they called it death. But like, that's like a deep fear that we have of death. So we have anxiety there. That's a reflection of it. And in the 12th house, it could be like mental, they say mental illness, or like mental causes of illness, which would be opposite of like day-to-day 6th house things. If you have physical problems, it will lead to an issue in the mental, So those things all can be changed if someone comes to me early. And now I'm kind of going on a tangent. I don't know if I'm answering the question, so let me know. But in the 6th house, we just make adjustments, right? We make necessary adjustments to our day-to-day life and what is truly of service to us, right? They say 6th house is about service. So yes, we want to be in service to the world, but we have to be able to serve ourselves to serve the world fully and completely. Those two things aren't separate. So we have to be mindful of that. What is our day-to-day routine? Because that will create things later in our life. And that's how we digest things. What's happening day to day. We have a digestion process that's happening day to day. So in the 8th house, we have, it could be death, it could be anxiety. I say everything dies and must be rebirthed, right? Or must be transmuted. So even when people say it's death, death is always in the context of being a part of life. And it also means rebirth can occur there. And I've worked with people who have gone through 8th house transits and have gone through a deep detoxification period. Deep stuff, right? So that can be another reflection of it. And that could add to the spectrum. Oh, it's death, but it's also transmutation, rebirth, and those things can manifest however, right? A lot of times it tends to be somebody feels like death, so they come to me and then we rebirth, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. And then in the 12th house, it could be about letting things go. It could be so many different things. Yeah, the 12th house, it's a lot of times there's so many significations of the 12th house. The way I look at it is, like what we need to let go of. A lot of people say it's like isolation. I like to think of it as like a retreat where I'm going to my spirit. Like I'm leaving the practical world and I'm going into my own spiritual retreat, right? To where I need to like purify and let things go. Even if we look at spirit as being like up there somewhere, and that could be problematic, but it's just a reflection of reality. So it's like, I'm like going up there, and what up there means to me is like, even when I think of it like as essential oils, when you're diffusing them, or like when you're making essential oils, everything goes up there, but everything doesn't come back down. Only the essence that is left comes back down. So it's like getting rid of all this stuff that isn't truly you. So in the ascendant, in your physical body, what you truly are is the only thing that's left. I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah, some reflections.
Definitely. I mean, one of the biggest things, everything you just said had gold in it. Absolutely. And in terms of where to start, the answer is to start with what's happening in your body and then go look at the chart. And
Right,
then
right.
if you wanted to just look at the chart to explore things, you talked about the ascendant and the different houses to look at. Yeah.
Right. Perfect. All right, cool.
Okay. Good. Yeah. It was perfect. Okay. Now, and one more question, I think, until we go to the other questions from the audience. What about this year? So if we were going to look at 2020 and the different transits, the main transits that are happening, how would you use that to inform taking care of our health in the most optimal way?
Got you. So, Capricorn. We're going to go straight to Capricorn. And a lot of us have been in our houses and we've felt restricted and we felt limited, and that can create restriction and limitation within our body. So we need to make sure that we have free flow movement within our body. That's one thing to think about. Capricorn corresponds to our musculoskeletal system. It corresponds to the fascia. I've been bringing that in a lot lately because I never heard anybody talk about it. And the fascia is like a new discovery in the past. Since medical astrology has been here, nobody knew about fascia back then. So I'm just bringing that in, and also brings in that quality of like Capricorn and Saturn being a yin, more feminine quality to it, right? So the fascia is like, it needs to be loose. It needs to have like space for mobility and flow. And that is what holds everything in reality. So your bones do have structures, yes. But, the fascia is a web that's like holding everything. And we need that right now too, as well. With everything going on, like that nurturing and feel more nurturing and feel held. So with Capricorn also, psychologically, emotionally, it corresponds to grief. So when it comes to grief, in traditional Chinese medicine, it corresponds to the lungs. So we need to work on our lung capacity, right? Our lung capacity. So the physical body, the structural system with Capricorn, and then also the emotional, psychological being grief, and then going with the lungs. And we see what's going on with an issue on our planet and a respiratory issue. So that's just really important, the lungs as well. And I also would just say after that, well, Mars is in Aries right now, adrenal glands. So your fight or flight response. What is making you act like a saber-toothed tiger is chasing you when you're at home, watching the news, right? That, no judgment, 0% judgment, but that is not necessary. And that's not how I want to treat myself. And that's not how I want you to treat yourself, right? Don't allow yourself to go into a space of feeling deep fear while you're just watching TV, while someone's opinion is different than yours, right? Take that personal authority back. And going back to Capricorn, responsibility, taking responsibility for things. And what I mean by taking responsibility, check in with your ability to respond to things. What is your ability to respond? So just always keeping that in mind. So yeah, Mars in Aries and how it's going retrograde. The adrenal glands and the fight or flight response. Being mindful of that. And things are about to go back into Aquarius at the very end of the year. So in evolutionary astrology, Aquarius can correspond to subtle mental trauma on some level, right? So because of that, I always say the nervous system, right? The nervous system. And then I was talking about the adrenal glands. I'm talking about feeling constricted, which would make you feel tense, which means you need to relax your nervous system anyway. But bringing it back to the nervous system, and I say that from now moving forward because things are going into Aquarius. And yeah, 2020 is a thing, and it's not like when we go into 2021, like reality is going to be like, oh, cut. Let's just go to something different, right? Like that's like, I know we talk like that, but it's just like we have to be mindful. We're on like a continuum when it comes to chronological time. So building up our nervous system and finding practices for our nervous system, super important because we are going into an an age of air with Saturn and Jupiter going into Aquarius. We'll go into a whole new 200-year cycle where there will be like we went from the industrial things to like the age of air, which will be like communication, data, everything's moving really fast. My nervous system stimulated, just you hear me talk like this, like, you know, that kind of thing. So being able to like come back to stillness, coming back to stillness. And I even invite people that I work with to practice that, right? Specifically right after there's a lot of things that like go on and they're communicating and they're interacting with a lot of things. It's like, can you come back to the stillness this quickly? It's like, can you do that? Because if you can, then that is a clear indication that your nervous system is functioning well. And if not, then, and it takes you a long time to get to this point of calmness and stillness, that's totally fine too. That's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about, can you do that? Like, can you identify that in yourself? And when you do that, yeah, like I was saying with Aquarius and your Uranus, rather, you can bring your own authenticity out into the world without having to be like overly stimulated and tense. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Very good. Really helpful. Especially, I mean, that nervous system piece is huge. And just a tip for parents. I tried this yesterday, especially for those of you who have kids at home. And, you know, kids have so much energy that it can be really overstimulating, you know, and it's like, you know, and so I was working at home all day yesterday, broadcasts and meetings and all kinds of things. And the girls were home with me. And then it was like transition into like mommy mode. It's like, whoa, I need to do that, what you just did, that like go back to stillness. So I had my daughter, Sophia. I was like, Sophia, you love to do like massage and oils and crystal healings. Why don't I'll pretend that I'm your client. And so she set up this whole spa thing for me and had so much fun. She's like, which crystal do you want? Which oil do you want? And, you know, she did her little hands on me doing her little massage. It was all I needed to like come back to that what you're talking about, that place of stillness. Besides getting good at doing that on our own, do you have any other tips for calming the nervous system when we realize that we're spun out or we're just, you know, super anxious? What else would you say are great tools?
Yeah, so for some people, and it always depends. I always say it depends. So for some people, I've been inviting them to just get into a squat position, and that could be whatever that looks like for you. Even if you can't get all the way down into a squat, like even if, sorry, I gotta show. So even if you just get down this low, like that's cool. But if you can like get down and like just stay there, like it is the force of being grounded, right? If you can stay in this position. And they say try to work up to like 30 minutes a day, not at a time, right? So it's just like, even if you do it one minute every time you go down, or 30 seconds, then you just work your way up. And if you don't even make it, then you're still making it because you're getting grounded. So that's one technique you can do. Another thing for some people, because this idea of like meditation and people needing to be like still point oneness, like that doesn't have to be meditation, y'all. Okay. Doesn't have to be meditation. So meditation could be like you like just moving your arms, right? Because sometimes we feel like we're literally like, it's just overcharged. You can get rid of that charge. You can shake. We're animals, people. We're animals. So just, we got to be mindful of that, because all animals do that. All animals do that, right? When you see a cat get scared, what does it do when it walks off? It's like, it just like shakes it off. So shake it off. And it allows yourself to be more loose and crazy, because we're all crazy, essentially, from my perspective, in our own ways, right? So that's a good technique. And then also just, I like to do left nostril breathing. So you just pinch off your right nostril, which is called pranayama. So everyone can look up any type of pranayama. It's a limb of yoga. That's a whole nother thing. There's 8 limbs of yoga, everyone. So when you're talking about yoga, you're not talking about just doing postures. That's just called asana yoga. That's just a part, little yoga talk. Okay, cool. So pranayama, but this is specifically taking your right hand or whatever, pinching off the right nostril and just breathing in and out of the left nostril. And I invite people to do that. And even when you do it, like think of that being like La Luna, like the feminine, the passive, the calming, the receptive side, the allowing side, the feeling safe and nurtured side. And maybe even imagining like silver coming up or down your spine when you're doing that, and just like allowing that to make you feel nurtured and nourished in the moment. So yeah, those are 3 good techniques. That one is like the grounding, the fixed kind of energy. One is the mutable energy. And then the other one, it doesn't necessarily stimulate. It's not cardinal necessarily, but you're being active about it. So that's cool too, because that's astrology as well.
One of the things I loved about what you just went through is you gave us how to work with the transits and snippets of both a few zodiac signs and the planets, and the way that you are working with the energy of each of the planets. That is one of the bonus courses for Health Secrets of the Zodiac. So Cameron did a mastery class on the planets and your health. And so that you actually get as a bonus when you join Health Secrets of the Zodiac, which is really, really cool. But then between the 2 classes, you're going to have those foundational building blocks to then start looking at the transits and to start getting a little more complex with it, right? Because transits brings it to another layer of complexity. Would you agree?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you tell them a little bit about that bonus mastery class on the planets that you did?
Yeah, I think that one is so important, and everybody who's in the course already, I actually invite people to go to the mastery class first, because it does have like the building blocks of astrology. And from my perspective, my orientation and my lens, it has the building blocks of like my context of reality in and of itself. So it's a great place to start, and it does go over each planet, and it doesn't just go over, it goes over kind of different things than the signs altogether, but it does go over like the sun would be like purpose, and then it will like be about your vitality, and just like corresponding those things will help you be able to like look at the transits and know what is probably coming up for you.
All right, so let's do a couple questions. So we have from Julianne. Hi, Cameron. I have had a lot of bladder issues and UTIs. I'm wondering where this might relate to my chart. I'm a Sagittarius with Libra rising, Sun, Moon, and Venus all in Sagittarius.
Yeah, so like I was saying before, we start, like when we're being technical, we start at the ascendant. And when we start at the ascendant, we're at Libra, right? So since we're at Libra, we're talking about the kidneys in the urinary tract. And that's where it would all start. And that would even be like, so not even from a transit perspective, just from like your natal perspective, right? Like look, going back to the natal chart, Libra rules the kidneys in the urinary tract. So just, that's where it would be at. The bladder can be Scorpio as well. And then some people correspond to Aquarius. But if the urinary tract and if the kidneys aren't filtering properly, then that's going to go to the bladder. So I start there that's where I would start, and then I would just go from there.
Okay,
so
what is
questions further than that? Let me know.
Yeah, well, so if she's having these issues with her bladder and UTIs, what might be imbalanced for her? Like how can she use the information about her Libra rising and the rest of what she gave us to
So a lot of times with Libra, the Libra energy, it is about I actually don't always like saying balance. I like to say harmony. So what is harmonious? And sometimes like balance can be like, I ate healthy for 4 days, now I'm going to eat unhealthy for 6 days. Or like,
Right.
People think of balance like that, but we're talking about like harmony. What is harmonious for me? So even with the Libra archetype, it does have to do with balance, but it's like mineral versus fluid balance, right? In your thinking, because Libra is an air sign, this is the way I look at it. Libra is an air sign. So in your thinking, are you like allowing yourself to act? And that would be like minerals, like based off how do you feel and how are you acting, right? Is your mind like working on those things, and like, is it really balanced? Like that would be the like psychological reflection of it, right? So the minerals would be like the earth, like what are you practically doing based off how you feel, which would be like the water, which would be like, so those 2 things, are they balanced in your mind? Are those things balanced in your mind? And it might be a reflection of your kidneys in the urinary tract as a whole. But if you have anything going on in Scorpio or Aquarius too, I would be curious to look at those things as well.
Okay, great. Okay, so and I'm thinking some of these questions, they're really general because what you normally do is you start with like what's happening in the body and then you use the astrology to help you because like I'm talking about this next question that I have from Luna. Love your name. Um, what do you recommend for someone who has a stellium in Capricorn in the first house? Like, can you
Oh,
answer that question?
huh?
Can you answer that question?
That's me. I have that. So
Nice.
yeah, I'm all for that. So depending on where the ascendant is, I would definitely say I hope you've been cleansing your body over the past few years because Pluto's been there for a while, and I hope that you potentially have been more like, yeah, disciplined and holding space for what your body is really asking for because Saturn's been there for a while. So that's something to do. Also, I would just say antispasmodics is something because Capricorn is like, even if you think about it, when people depict Capricorn, a lot of times it's like this old dry man. He's just like all like withered away and stuff. So yeah, so I would definitely say plants that work on relaxing tension. Relaxing tension. Jamaican dogwood is one of my favorites there. Yeah, Jamaican dogwood's great there. I love that plant. Just an open invitation, not a recommendation. And then also learning about fascia. Learning about fascia because if you with the fascia, whenever you're even working with the fascia in your body, you're like doing things and pressing on, like I'm oversimplifying it here, but you're pressing on it for a long time, Saturn, right? And then it's like by doing that over time, you're rehydrating it. You're rehydrating it. And Saturn and Capricorn can be cold, dry, tension. And just by pressing down on it, which, right, putting constriction on that area of the body is the actual remedy for it. So, oh, I feel constriction. Oh, put something on it that's like pressing down on it, and then it like brings the life back to it.
Hmm.
It's kind of like interesting that that's like the poison and the medicine of the Capricorn Saturn energy.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's one thing. But with all the Capricorn stuff, yeah, it could be reflected in your knees. It could be reflected in your lower back. So Capricorn can be kind of complex, but that's what I would say in general.
What do you think about Rolfing for working with the fascia?
I've heard different. I think it's good. I've heard different reviews about it. Some people, it's like really intense for some people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want people to be mindful that it can be very intense and asking questions before you go to a certain practitioner and know if they can hold space for you and what's going to come up if you do something that intense.
Yeah.
So I think it's great personally. Yeah.
It's funny. It's
But
interesting that like fascia has just really come into my awareness too this year. And with you talking about all this, the Capricorn and the fascia and really needing to make sure we're taking care of that part of our body, which I think most of us never think about. At least I never did, but how important it is because it's literally webbing throughout the whole body and it's affecting everything. So yeah. Okay. Tara says, amazing info. Thank you. I was curious what planets and signs, etc., are connected to the eyes. Thank you.
the sun is connected to the eyes. I would say Leo too. Leo sun. Mm-hmm. Because based off your circulation, right, and also like things being illuminated, you could see it, right? So the sun, and they do in the traditional astrology, they say the right eye would be the sun, and then the left eye would be the moon. So that's another reflection that people have. But I look at it as the sun because just in the physical anatomy, if the blood's moving like it should and circulation is good, sun, vital force, sun, Leo, circulation, then the eyes will be getting nourished and you'll be able to see clearly. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Are you okay taking a couple more?
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. So Raya says, hi, Cameron. My son is Cancer rising with his moon. Oh, okay. Hi, Cameron. My son is Cancer rising with his moon Ceres and Pluto and Capricorn in his sixth house. I notice it's hard for him to remain present in his body. Do you have any advice how I can help him?
With kids, I get really particular about kids. I'm not gonna lie. So with kids, honestly, I would invite you to look up his human design chart too as well. I don't know if everybody knows about human design, but that's a great tool for working with children. The person who actually cultivated that, yeah, he says it's for children, so you know how to work with them specifically.
Wow.
and like so they can grow up as their unique individual self. And yeah, so that's one thing. But with all those placements, I would say just make sure that they feel comfortable and emotionally safe, and that there's not too much like restriction and limitation on the way they express themselves, because they're gonna tend towards having a desire to they have to make adjustments throughout their life based off of the parental societal norms in reality. And I say that because Capricorn is 6th house. The way I look at that a lot of times is like society, Capricorn, parental conditioning, Capricorn, and then the 6th house being about day-to-day life and adjustments that we need to make over time. So I would keep it at that, because when it comes to kids, I like to be more hands-off, and I like to talk to kids because they always reveal the truth way quicker than adults do a lot of times. So yeah, I would invite more like observation and allowance to like let that unfold as you observe, with all the things that you've learned from here and the Health Secrets of the Zodiac course as well. And it would just like be illuminated. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. Kristen is asking, I was born with epilepsy and have traced this to my Sun conjunct Jupiter in Leo in the 10th, square Mars in Scorpio in the 2nd. How would you suggest that I harmonize this?
That's a consultation.
Okay. Yeah.
I would love to help you with that for sure. That's something that, like, when it comes to epilepsy, it can be very, like, it gets really particular, and I like to go in depth with that. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable, and I feel that needs like deep care and presence. So I would want to do that only in the correct way.
Thank you for that, Cameron. Yes. And because you're saying fascia is so important for all of us to pay attention to in 2020 because of Capricorn, I'm going to have you answer Vicky's question, which you did answer earlier, but maybe you could just explain it again. What is fascia?
I would just say it's the interconnected webbing that holds the body together, right? That's what I would say. Interconnected webbing that holds the body together.
It's physical, like we can see it, right? It's not just an energetic thing.
No, it's not just energetic. It's a real thing, and you have to like cut past things to get to it. I'm pretty sure, especially when people get older and stuff like that. If it's dehydrated, then it kind of like actually like withers away, which is like the Saturn energy, right? It's like withering away. He's like all old, but now that we have understanding, we could be old and like have good posture. Anyway, yeah, but it's the webbing that holds all things together, and even Saturn and Capricorn corresponds to the skin, right? So it's like the inner skin. And some people will say it's like actually the largest organ system in our body. And not our actual outer skin. And they said the inner skin is that. And also there's like complexities while like Mars is exalted in Capricorn, because a lot of muscle is fascia. I'm not going to go there. I'm still like working on understanding that deeply. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. Raya says that her son is a manifesting generator. I don't know if that helps at all, but.
Manifesting. Oh, yeah. Okay. So when it comes to that, I would ask, they need to be their own personal authority. And like, so really, I would just say, ask them questions and see if in their body and how they respond, if you energetically feel them saying, or Outside of that, words are cool. That's cool. Words are cool. But when it comes to generators and manifesting generators, just that feeling. And even invite them to just give you yes or no answers.
Nice. All right, Cameron, thank you so much. So can you please just answer a couple questions about the course for those who haven't heard of it? It's Health Secrets of the Zodiac. It's open until Sunday, August 23rd, you guys. So go check it out. It's astrologyhub.com/secrets. It's a 7-hour plus online course with Cameron that you can do at your own pace. So Cameron, can you tell us a little bit more about the course, what you cover, what they're going to learn?
Yeah, so the course is over. There's going to be images to evoke a feeling of my lens of how I see the zodiac signs, and it'll be an invitation for other people to go out in nature or go out in life and just see the reflections of the zodiac signs and how they experience it. Image, and because everybody learns different, right? So I'm gonna have images there, and I'm gonna be talking, and then there will be like bullet point form of psychological, emotional, physical reflections. Yeah, but it starts with physical, and then it'll go into the emotional, psychological, and I'll weave that back into the physical, and then we'll go to like spiritual, evolutionary, and then I'll weave that back into the physical and the emotional and psychological. And then from there, we go to nature specifically. So the first thing is like images. And then we talk about the energetic architecture, like how this sign is made up. Then we go to the physical. Then we go to emotional. Then we go to the spiritual. And then we go to nature and the reflections in nature. So like pictures, images that bring up the sign in nature. And then we'll go over crystals, herbs, and then there'll be an embodiment practice as well. So it's pretty broad spectrum and holistic. And just by listening to each sign, if you didn't know what you had going on, trust me, you'll have an idea for sure.
Amazing. Amazing. We're already getting such incredible feedback from the students who have joined us so far. Thanks to everybody who has jumped in, and please continue to send us feedback because we love to hear from you and love to hear how you're experiencing the course and how it's impacting your life. And then, like we said earlier, you do get the bonus health secrets of the planets when you join this course as well. So that's just on top of it all. Just some extra, and that's a 2-hour workshop that Cameron did with us for our Inner Circle members. Inner Circle members do get a discount on this course. Your discount code is in your membership portal, so check it out. And Cameron, if someone's thinking about it, who is this for? Like, who is the right person for this course? And what level of astrology do they need to be at?
Yeah, I really don't think anyone needs to have any certain level of astrology, because we're talking about a body and you have a body, and we're talking about emotions, you have emotions, and psychological things that are going on with you, and you have spiritual aspirations, especially if you're coming here in this community and talking about things with us. So I really say anybody, but anybody who's looking to find more embodiment, right? To deepen into our body and make this like something where it's like the celestial forces and the terrestrial forces come together. So we're not just all like, oh, the planets and the stars, and we're in our minds, and we bring it down into our bodies, bring it deep into our bodies, because we need to be here in the present moment with our understandings of things. So it's for anybody who's looking for anything like that.
What do you think the natural outcome of additional embodiment is? Like, how does that change people's experience of life from your perspective?
Yeah, it definitely brings a more sense of calmness, a more sense of composure, because when we have understanding and we like are in our body, we're taking up our own space, right? So this is also this idea of like, there's a difference between being selfish and self-full. Like, you're just like full of yourself because you like know yourself. So it's just like having that understanding allows you to orient to life in a more well-adjusted way from your lens, not well-adjusted based off what I think it is, because you're going to take the course and you're going to experience what you feel like you need to change inside of yourself so that you can find a deeper understanding of you, and also an understanding of how the world might interact with you. Because I forgot to say that in the course, we talk about deconditioning as well. So each zodiac sign would be like, everybody, like, I see so many things like Aries are just so selfish, or this is this, and this sign does this. So I go through that as well, right? It's like, if you have those energetic forces inside of yourself, that is you. Know that you have these aspects of you, and don't let people shame you out of what is something that is inside of you that inherently you came here to work through to prepare you for something more moving forward. And we'll talk about the spectrum. So, because I'm not like enabling people to like, just go be selfish. Yeah, do it. Like, right. It's like, no, like assert yourself and learn, know the ways of that Aries energy so that you can accelerate the process of evolution. And yeah, that's what I would say. So, yeah.
That alone is so empowering, because each one of us carries the stereotype about our sign. Like, I remember for the first, I don't know how long of my life, I didn't like being a Capricorn. It seemed so boring and dry and like, just not fun. So I was like, gosh, I'm a Capricorn, but I kind of wish I was something else. But in learning more of astrology, it's like through the process of understanding these archetypes different, or these energies differently, we have the opportunity to fall in love with ourselves and the unique makeup of who we are, so we can be more self-full. Like you said, you're such a great example of self-full, like just bringing yourself completely to what you're doing, and in such a unique way. And it's amazing to witness and inspiring for all of us to see, because can you imagine if our children kept that permission, or had that permission and lived that way? And if we did as adults, then this symphony would actually work out really amazingly because
Yeah.
it's so divinely inspired.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah.
beautiful. And I appreciate that. And just in reflection, I do, and it's interesting too, because a lot of times when people talk about astrology, like some people in their relationships, they like, if like their partners or people that they hang out with, they feel like they're like more distant and cold because they're like watching things. And that could be true for me sometimes too, maybe. Just depends on who's reflecting. But it also allows us to love for what someone's essential nature and their essence is.
Yes.
So these little things that we might think like, oh, my partner does this and this is so annoying. It's like, oh, they do that. That was so precious and cute. And I love it because that is you and I love you and I will leave you as you are.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
Huge. World's changing right there. Yes. And it starts with ourselves, right? The ability to do that within ourselves. So Cameron, you're amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for sending in your great questions and for tuning in here with us today. If you want to join Cameron's class, it's astrologyhub.com/secrets. Check it out. See if it's right for you. We would love to have you. And you'll have that opportunity to send in questions. We'll answer as many as we can. We can't promise that every question is going to get answered. But that live Q&A is on August 26th for all the students. So that's next Wednesday. And we'll look forward to having an intimate space with the students of that class next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you, Amanda. Thanks, everybody over at Astrology Hub. Always great.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, take care. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for making astrology a part of your life and for being a part of our community. And I cannot wait to catch up with you on the next episode. Take care.